The world's first story is a horror story. It was written in the Babylonian language, which is a Semitic tongue, related to the modern languages of Hebrew and Arabic and Aramaic, not of monsters, but of mortality. The Epic of Gilgamesh, written 4 millennia ago, lays bare the terror of being human. For decades, translators have chipped away at its meaning. But Andrew George's definitive work is different. Translation into a modern language was achieved that was reliable. Artists, poets, musicians, dramatists, operatists, librettists have fed on the ancient story of Gilgamesh and turned it into their own property. It's a confession of the epic's true, urgent message. The story of King Gilgamesh isn't just history. It's a chilling prophecy, and it feeds into wild theories about ancient visitors and a catastrophe that reset the planet. The ancients tried to warn U.S., the man who found Noah's story. In 1872, in a cramped, dusty room at the British Museum, a man named George Smith was about to change the world. He was a self-taught genius, a former banknote engraver who had become obsessed with the strange, wedge-shaped writing of ancient Assyria, cuneiform. For years, he had been poring over thousands of broken clay tablets. These weren't scrolls. They were the shattered remnants of a royal library, the library of King Ashurbanipal, dug up from the ruins of the ancient city of Nineveh, near modern-day Mosul, Iraq. Most of it was, to be blunt, boring. Tax records, hymns to forgotten gods, lists of kings, royal propaganda. But Smith was looking for something specific. He was a deeply religious man in the strict Victorian era, and he was hunting for any connection, any proof of the stories in the Bible. And get this, on one fateful day, he found it. He was translating a particular fragment when his eyes went wide. His hands began to shake. The tablet was describing a great flood. It mentioned a ship built to escape the waters, animals taken on board, and a bird released to find dry land. It was the story of Noah's Ark, plain and simple. But here's the catch. This tablet was not from ancient Israel. It was from Mesopotamia, and the language it was written in, Akkadian, was far, far older than the oldest known copies of the Hebrew Bible. We're talking centuries older. This wasn't just a wow factor. This was a historical earthquake. Smith, upon realizing the full implication of what he was reading, was so overcome that eyewitnesses say he stood up, began pacing the room in a state of wild excitement, and to the shock of his reserved colleagues, started to tear off his own clothes. He had found the first independent, non-biblical account of the Great Flood. On December 3rd, 1872, he presented his findings. The news exploded. It was the biggest story on Earth, but it also created a massive problem. Did this prove the Bible was true, or did it prove that the Bible had borrowed its most famous story from an even older pagan civilization? This was a crisis of faith, and it started a battle of ideas that still rages. Some scholars, especially in Germany, jumped on this to promote a new wild theory of the time, called Panabalonism. This was the idea that everything, every major myth, every god, every story from every culture, including the Bible, was just a copy of an older Babylonian original. As you can imagine, this did not go over well. The crazy part is that tablet, the one that made George Smith famous, was just one tiny piece of a much larger, much more profound puzzle. It was, as he soon discovered, just one chapter in a vast, sprawling story, the Epic of Gilgamesh. But here's the deal. Smith's discovery was incomplete. The tablets were shattered. The story was full of holes, like a movie with half the scenes missing. For the next 150 years, scholars did their best, but they were working with a broken mirror. They knew the basics: a powerful king, a wild man, a great adventure, and a desperate search for eternal life. But they were missing the point. They were missing the warning. That is until Andrew George. If George Smith found the puzzle, Andrew George is the man who spent a lifetime putting it together. He's a modern-day Assyriologist, a professor, and basically the world's foremost Gilgamesh detective. He didn't just reread the old translations. He spent decades hunting down every last fragment of the epic. He traveled to museums in Iraq, Germany, Turkey, and the United States, digging through uncatalogued boxes and basement, looking for pieces that had been mislabeled or ignored for a century. His landmark translation of the Epic of Gilgamesh is considered the definitive standard version, and it's not just a new translation, it's a revelation. Because of his work piecing together fragments like a high-stakes forensic investigator. We now know what the epic really says, and it is a confession. It's a 4,000-year-old confession from the dawn of human civilization. It's a message, a warning left by the first people who ever built a city about the one thing that truly terrifies us all. What Andrew George found hidden in the gaps between the broken clay is the real message of Gilgamesh, and it's a message we are still 4,000 years later, desperately trying to ignore. But what he pieced together wasn't just a story. It was a terrifying look into a past we were never meant to forget, decoding the divinity of Gilgamesh. What most people don't realize is that the Epic of Gilgamesh is not what the ancients called it. That's a modern nickname. The real title, the one a Babylonian scribe would have known it by, comes from its very first line. And thanks to Andrew George's meticulous work, we know that line is he who saw the deep. That title changes everything. It's not the king who slayed a monster, or the man who wanted to live forever. It's he who saw the deep. The deep doesn't just mean the ocean. In Akkadian, the language of the epic, it means the unknowable, the mystery, the fundamental hidden truth of existence. The epic is a confession about a man who journeyed to the edge of reality and saw the truth. And that truth broke him before it rebuilt him. Andrew George's work was painstaking. You have to understand what he was working with. Ununiform isn't like reading a book. It's one of the most complex writing systems ever, invented with hundreds of signs, each one capable of meaning different things. It's a rebus, a code, and a language all in one. Now, imagine that. Code is written on clay tablets, shattered into thousands of pieces, and scattered across the globe. This is what Andrew George was facing. His job wasn't just translating, it was forensic. Reconstruction. He would sit with two tiny, unrelated-looking fragments, one from a museum in Berlin and one from Baghdad, and realized they were once part of the same tablet. He could tell, by the handwriting of the scribe, the color of the clay, the way the break, line fit. He was literally putting a shattered soul back together. And his translation is the confession because it is honest. For the first time, his version includes all the gaps, all the broken lines. It doesn't paper over the missing parts, but it also fills more of those gaps than anyone in history. In 2011, George and another scholar were in a museum in Iraqi Kurdistan when a curator showed them a set of tablets seized from smugglers. As George translated, his heart must have leaped. It was a new chapter of Gilgamesh. 20 new lines no one had read in the modern world. These lines added a whole new dimension, describing the cedar forest not as a scary place, but as a vibrant jungle, a noisy symphony of monkeys and birds. This small detail changes the meaning of Gilgamesh's quest, turning it from a heroic act to something darker. But this is where the wild theories come in. The epic doesn't just start with a king, it starts with a demigod. The text is explicit. Gilgamesh is 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. Yeah, about that. How does that even work? 2/3. This isn't just a flowery compliment. It's stated as a fact. This has led many to ask, who or what were these gods? This is the doorway to the Anunnaki theory. According to some interpretations of Sumerian text, the Anunnaki were a group of gods who came from the heavens to earth. These theories propose that these weren't spiritual beings, but flesh and blood visitors, advanced beings with technology we couldn't comprehend. So, here's the deal. Was Gilgamesh's 2/3 divinity a biological fact? Was he the product of an Anunnaki breeding program, an attempt to create a perfect ruler by mixing their advanced divine genetics with mortal human stock? This would explain his superhuman strength, his towering arrogance, and his restless, unhuman energy. He was a hybrid, and he knew it. His people in the great city of Uruk certainly knew something was wrong. He was a terrible ruler, a tyrant. The epic says he leaves no son to his father and leaves no virgin to her lover. He was out of control, a wild bull rampaging through his own city. His people cried out not to a priest, but to the gods themselves. They begged them, "You created this monster. Now fix it." The gods hear them, and their solution is one of the wildest parts of the story. They decide they can't destroy Gilgamesh. Instead, they'll distract him. They'll create a second self, an equal, someone who can finally match his stormy heart. So, the mother goddess, Auru, washed her hands, pinched off clay, and cast it on the step. From this clay, she created Enkidu. But was it just clay? The wild theory here is even more startling. If the gods are advanced geneticists, pinching off clay sounds a lot like a description of a cloning or genetic engineering process. Was Enkidu a clone of Gilgamesh or a different model altogether? He is described as the opposite of the city king Gilgamesh. He is a wild man, shaggy with hair. He knows neither people nor land and feeds on grass with the gazelles. He is pure raw nature. These two beings, one a two-thirds hybrid ruler, the other a wild man engineered from the earth, were set on a collision course. The warning wasn't just about a king. It was about a conflict set in motion by the gods themselves. And their first encounter would be an initiation by fire and by culture, the sin that sealed their fate. So here we have these two forces, Gilgamesh, the divine hybrid, ruling his city like a prison, and Enkidu, the engineered wild man running free with the animals. He's so in tune with nature that he goes around freeing animals from trappers' snares. A trapper sees this wild man and is terrified. He goes to Gilgamesh, who in his typical arrogance comes up with a plan. A very strange plan to tame Enkidu. They will send a woman Shamhat. The text often calls her a harlot, but this might be a mistranslation. She may have been a priestess from the temple, a woman dedicated to the gods and culture. Her job is to civilize Enkidu. She waits for him at the watering hole. When Enkidu, who has never seen a person like himself, approaches, she revealed her charm. For 6 days and 7 nights, they are together. The text is clear. This was a profound initiation. It wasn't just about physical relations. She was teaching him. She was transferring culture. And when it's over, Enkidu is changed forever. He goes to run with his friends, the gazelles, but they shied away from him. The animals no longer recognize him. The epic says he has lost his swiftness. But here's the catch. It also says he has gained something new. He had reason and wide understanding. He was no longer an animal. He was human. Shamat clothes him, teaches him to eat bread and drink ale, things he had never known. She tells him about the tyrant Gilgamesh, and Enkidu, now a man, is furious. He sees Gilgamesh as an offense against justice. He travels to the city of Uruk, his destiny to challenge the king. The two finally meet. They collide in a public doorway blocking the street. The text describes an epic brawl. They grappled with each other, holding fast like wrestlers. They shattered the doorpost. The wall shook. The whole city trembled as these two super beings fought for dominance. But then something amazing happens. They stop. Gilgamesh, for the first time in his life, has met his equal. He's met the second self the gods designed for him. In that moment of stalemate, their rage turns to respect, and they kissed each other and formed a friendship. Gilgamesh, the lonely, arrogant tyrant, finally has a brother, and that changes him. But his old hubris is still there. He's still a two-thirds god, and he's bored. He needs to prove his power. He gets a terrible idea. We're bored, he tells Enkidu. Let's go make a name for ourselves. Let's go to the sacred cedar forest, dispatch the guardian Humbaba, and cut down all the sacred trees. Enkidu, who knows the forest, is horrified. This is a bad idea, he warns. Humbaba, his roar is the floodstorm. His mouth is fire. His breath is a pestilence. He is the guardian appointed by the gods. He is not something to be trifled with. But Gilgamesh laughs it off. Only the gods live forever, he says. As for mankind, our days are numbered. All our achievements are but wind. I will go first. You just call out to me. Go on. Be not afraid. He forces his friend to go. This is the ultimate act of hubris. But this is where another wild theory comes in. Who or what was Humbaba? The text is strange. Humbaba is the guardian of the cedar forest, a place the gods decreed as off-limits. The cedars were a priceless resource, the best building material in the ancient world. Was Humbaba just a monster, or was he something else? Andrew George's new fragment described the forest as a beautiful symphonic jungle. This sounds less like a monster's lair and more like a nature preserve. The wild theory is that Humbaba was not a beast, but a machine, an ancient piece of high technology. Think about the description. His roar is the floodstorm. His mouth is fire. This sounds like an automated high-tech guardian, a security system left by the Anunnaki to protect their valuable cedar reserve. So Gilgamesh and Enkidu didn't just go to vanquish a monster. They went on a military operation to decommission a piece of ancient technology and steal a divine resource. The text says that when they vanquished Humbaba, he pleaded for his life. But Gilgamesh and Enkidu showed no mercy. They dispatched him and cut down the cedars. They float the massive logs back to Uruk as heroes. They are at the height of their power. They are untouchable. They have defied the gods and gotten away with it. Or so they thought. The crazy part is they had just signed their own end warrant. The gods were furious and they demanded a price. One of them would have to perish. The Great Flood, a warning or a weapon. The gods hold a council in the heavens. And get this, it sounds less like a divine judgment and more like an angry corporate board meeting. The god Enlil, who seems to be the bad guy in many of these stories, is furious. They have vanquished the forest guardian, he rages. They have stolen the sacred cedars. One of them must pay. But which one? Not Gilgamesh. He's two-thirds one of them. He's royalty. So they choose Enkidu, the expendable one, the engineered man from the clay. Enkidu's passing is not quick or noble. It's slow and agonizing. He lies in bed for 12 days, racked with fever. He has visions of the underworld, a house of dust where the dead see no light and eat clay as bread. It is a bleak, terrifying vision of the end. Gilgamesh sits by his bed, helpless, watching his only friend, his second self, fade away. When Enkidu finally passes, Gilgamesh is not just sad, He is broken. This is the precise moment he who saw the deep is born. For the first time, the two-thirds. God King understands mortality. It is no longer an abstract idea. It is a physical cold, creeping terror. Andrew George's translation captures the raw panic. Gilgamesh wept for him bitterly. He roams the wild, clad in a lion skin, his royal robes discarded. He touched his heart, but it beat no longer. The realization hits him like a physical blow. What my brother is now, that shall I be when I am gone. Despair is in my heart. This is the confession Andrew George uncovered. The epic at its core is a story of trauma. Gilgamesh is having a complete psychological breakdown. He is no longer a king. He is a terrified animal fleeing the one predator no one can escape. He becomes obsessed with one single thought. He must not pass away. He knows of one man who legend says escaped this fate. His name is Utnapishtim, the man who survived the great flood and was rewarded by the gods with eternal life. Gilgamesh decides he will find him and force him to share the secret. His journey is impossible. He travels to the ends of the earth. He reaches the great Mashu Mountains, the twin peaks where the sun rises and sets. And here the text gets really weird. Guarding the entrance to the sun's passage are scorpion beings. They are described as half human, half scorpion, and their radiance is terrifying. Their glance is the end. This has fueled endless wild theories. What is the sun's passage? And who are these scorpion beings? Some theorists propose this wasn't a mountain. It was a gateway, a stargate or portal to the realm of the gods. And the scorpion beings weren't creatures. They were guardians of this portal, perhaps in some kind of high-tech exosuit that gave them a terrifying appearance. They see Gilgamesh's despair, and they warn him, no mortal man has ever gone this way. Gilgamesh, you will not find the life you seek. He doesn't listen. He plunges into the passage and walks for 12 leagues in total darkness, a symbolic journey through his own despair. He emerges into a garden of the gods, a magical place where the trees bear carnelian and lapis lazuli. There he meets a tavern keeper by the sea, the goddess Siduri. She sees this wild, haggarded man, his face scored by wind and sun, and is frightened. He tells her his story, and she gives him the first great warning of the epic. She tells him, Gilgamesh, where are you roaming? And the life you seek, you will never find. When the gods created mankind, they allotted an end to mankind. Life they retained in their own keeping. As for you, Gilgamesh, let your belly be full. Be merry day and night. Let your clothes be clean. Look at the child holding your hand. Let your wife delight in your lap. This is the true task of mankind. It's a seize-the-day speech 4,000 years old. But Gilgamesh, deep in his trauma, doesn't listen. How can I be silent? He rages. My friend is dust, and shall I not also lay down and never rise again? He forces her to help him. He crosses the waters of the N, a place no living person should go. And finally, on a distant shore, he finds him, Utnapishtim, the flood survivor. Gilgamesh blurts out his question, how do I get eternal life? Utnapishtim looks at this desperate broken king and tells him the second great warning and confesses the real story of the flood. This is the story that made George Smith weep. Utnapishtim says the great gods decided to destroy humanity. Why? The text says humanity had become too noisy. What does noisy mean? Was it overpopulation, or as wild theories suggest, was it technological noise? Had humanity, perhaps using leftover Anunnaki tech, become too advanced? Were they creating a den that interfered with the gods? Was the flood a reset button? Utnapishtim confesses that the flood wasn't a unanimous decision. It was a civil war among the gods. The god Enlil ordered the flood, but the god Enki, the trickster god who in Sumerian texts created humans, secretly warned Utnapishtim. He told him to tear down his house and build a boat. Utnapishtim built a massive cube-shaped ark and saved his family, craftsmen, and the seed of all living things. When the flood came, it was so terrible that even the gods were terrified. The text says they cowered like dogs huddled against the outer wall of heaven. After the flood, Enlil was furious that someone had survived, but Enki calmed him down. As a reward, or perhaps just to get him out of the way, they rewarded Utnapishtim and his wife with eternal life, and sent them to live far away at the mouth of the rivers. But here's the catch. Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh, I was just lucky. It was a one-time deal. Who will convene the gods for you? He confesses the secret. There is no secret. But Utnapishtim says, let's test you. If you really want to conquer the end, first try to conquer its little brother, sleep. Stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights. Gilgamesh, exhausted from his journey, agrees and immediately falls asleep. He sleeps for 7 days. When he wakes, he is surrounded by 7 loaves of moldy bread, 1 for each day. He has failed. He cannot even conquer sleep. He is utterly defeated. The confession is complete. There is no escape. As a final act of pity, Utnapishtim's wife convinces him to give Gilgamesh something. Utnapishtim tells him of one last chance. There is a plant, he says, at the bottom of the sea. It has a prickle like a thorn. It will not make you live forever, but it will make you young again. Gilgamesh, with his last bit of hope, ties stones to his feet, sinks to the seafloor, and finds the plant. He has it, the fountain of youth. On the journey home, he stops to bathe in a cool spring. He leaves the plant on the shore, and a serpent smelling the plant sweetness slithers out, eats the plant, and immediately sheds its skin, reborn. Gilgamesh sat down and wept. He has lost completely. This is the final wild theory. The serpent. In every ancient culture, the serpent holds secret knowledge. Think the Garden of Eden. The serpent steals the secret to rejuvenation and is reborn. Is the serpent just an animal, or is it a symbol for a group? A serpent cult, or a hidden bloodline that holds the real secret to longevity, hoarding it from humanity? Gilgamesh had the answer in his hands, and he let it slip away. He was returning to Uruk with nothing. Or did he? Did he return with the one thing that truly mattered? The 4,000-year-old answer to our fear. So, here's the deal. We're at the end of the story. Gilgamesh, the two-thirds god, the man who fought his clone, who vanquished an ancient machine, who traveled through a stargate, and who spoke to the flood survivor, is a failure. He comes back to his city, Uruk. He is empty-handed. He failed. He lost his friend. He failed the test of sleep. He lost the plant of youth. He is going to pass away just like Enkidu. Just like everyone. The terror won. But as he approaches the city, something has changed. He is no longer the frantic, terrified man-animal. He is quiet. He is he who saw the deep. He saw the truth and it scoured him clean. He turns to the boatman who brought him home, and he says the most important lines in the entire epic. This is the final confession. This is the warning. He doesn't point to his gold or his power. He doesn't talk about the gods or the Anunnaki. He points to the walls of his city, the massive baked brick walls his people had built. Go Upabi, walk on the wall of Uruk, Gilgamesh says. Inspect the foundation platform, survey the brickwork. Is not its brickwork of baked brick? Did not the 7 sages lay its foundations? This is it. This is the answer. Andrew George's confession, the one his life's work makes so painfully clear, is that the Epic of Gilgamesh is not a story about a failed quest for immortality. It's a story about redefining immortality. This is the down-to-earth part. The thing is, all those wild theories, the Anunnaki, the genetic engineering, the high-tech guardians, the stargates, the serpent cults, they are all in their own way, just like Gilgamesh's quest. They are a distraction. They are a way to look for a secret supernatural answer. But the confession Andrew George's meticulous scholarly real work uncovered is that the ancients already knew all this. They knew about hubris, defying the god's nature. They knew about terror, fear of the end, and they found the only real solution. The warning is this: you will pass away. Your body will fail. You will turn to dust. That is the one inescapable truth of being human. Stop fighting it. Stop chasing a supernatural fantasy. Whether it's a magic plant or an ancient alien secret, you are wasting your life just as Gilgamesh wasted his. The true immortality, the epic confesses, is what you leave behind. It's the walls you build. Maybe your wall is your children and the lessons you teach them. Maybe it's a company you build, a book you write, a garden you plant, or a community you help. It is the lasting, tangible, real impact you have on the world and on other people. Gilgamesh, the tyrant who took from everyone, finally became a king when he realized his legacy was in what he built and gave to his people. The epic ends by praising Gilgamesh, not for his divine blood or his strength, but because he saw the deep, knew the ways, and brought back a tale of the days before the flood. He returned with wisdom, and he shared it. His story became his immortality. And get this, 4,000 years later, we are still telling his story. He achieved his goal. We are still ignoring the warning. We are still Gilgamesh, terrified of the end. We are obsessed with anti-aging, with living forever, with uploading our minds to computers. We are chasing a fantasy just like he did. Are we missing the key detail? The Babylonians 4,000 years ago already gave us the answer. Andrew George's confession is simply that he pieced together their message so clearly that we can no longer pretend we don't understand it. So, what do you think? Is our modern world just as obsessed with escaping our fate as Gilgamesh was? Or are the wild theories the real hidden truth? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more hidden stories.